In this video series, we're talking about how to import a model from Dazed and link it with faceshift so that you can add your markerless MOCAP onto your pre-made model. In this video, we're looking at Face Robot from Soft Image. And we're talking about the pros and cons of Face Robot. Some of the pros are that it is pre-programmed, so you don't really have to know anything about it. You can just import your model and go right to town. Some of the other benefits are that it is also from Autodesk, so you can import your model without any hassle from one application to another, like Mudbox or Motion Builder or Maya. Some of the cons are that you still have to transport your model back to Maya, and then you have to transport your MOCAP onto your model, which adds another step in your pipeline, which takes more time. Some of the other cons are that Soft Image is its entire software profile, which costs over $1,000, and you're probably not going to use it for anything but Face Robot. Another one of the benefits is that it has lip sync, so you don't even need to have MOCAP. You can just type words in to the text editor and it will move the model on the face. But one of the cons is that it doesn't mate up seamlessly with faceshift, so you have to modify it to get it to work. I'm not going to make another video about Face Robot. There's plenty of videos out there already. What we're going to do in this video is try to show how you can get Maya to act like Face Robot and mate it up seamlessly with faceshift so that you don't have to have that extra $1,000 software and you don't have to have that extra step in your pipeline. The first thing we want to do is to make a new sphere. Pressing 5 to go to smooth shaded. Next we're going to go up and choose the last magnet to the right, which will make the object live. Now you see that we cannot select the object. Next we're going to go to skeleton and select the joint tool. After we reset the tool, we want to set the symmetry to the x-axis. We'll place a joint right on the circle. There's another joint there, but it's just below the surface, so you can't hardly see it. Pressing 4 to go into the wireframe and then 5 to go back in the smooth shaded again. So we press the magnet again to make the object not live. It's tough to see, but there is in fact actually a joint there. We're going to go to bind skin and smooth bind after selecting all three objects. I'm pressing W to access the transform manipulator. You can see we can select the joint on the right, but we can't select the joint on the left. And that doesn't do any good. So we're going to do the process over again. We deleted our first joint, making the object live again, selecting the joint tool. This time we're turning symmetry off. And we'll place our first joint roughly in the same place. Then we want to go into the 4-frame view and place our second joint. They don't have to be exact because we're going to line them up afterwards. As you can see, I'm off a little bit, so we'll select our manipulator tool and line it up fairly close. But now you can see that it has left its position on the outside of the sphere. So we'll move it in the x-axis. If we zero it, it will just take it to the center. We want to move it to the outer edge. By looking in the perspective view, we can see about where it is, and we'll set it right next to the edge of the sphere. Again, we want to turn off our live object. Pressing Shift, we're selecting all three objects. We'll go to Bind Skin and Smooth Bind. Now you can see that each one of our joints moves the mesh independently. However, while we're creating eyebrows, this doesn't work very well. So we're going to have to go to our Paint Skin Weights material. First, we want to assign a new material because the Paint Skin Weights tool does not work on the Lambert 1 default shader. We want to go to Paint Effects with our object selected. The second over is to make the object paintable. Next, we want to go to Skin, Edit Smooth Skin. A few down the list is the Paint Skin Weights tool, which will now allow us to paint on the object. We want to open up the tool settings and select the joint that we're working with. We have to have the object selected, otherwise we won't be able to see what we're painting. So we're going to go down and flood the object. But I have my tool settings messed up from last time. So we reset the object, then we'll flood the object. White means active and black means inactive. So we're going to flood the object with black and then move our value back up to +1 so that we can paint on the surface, the area that we want to affect. Now I'm turning back down to black so that we can smooth in the area that we just painted. So give it a nice blend. By turning the opacity down, we can smooth it even farther. Using the half brush gives us a nice soft edge. By pressing the B key and click dragging, we can change the size of the brush. Next, we want to go up to the top and select our second joint. Then we'll go down, max out our opacity, and flood with black, then add our effector area with white again. Lowering our opacity to 0.2, then using a larger brush to feather the edge. You can also use the smooth operation under paint operations. So now when we select our joint, it seems to be moving the entire sphere. But when we select the right eyebrow, it seems to be affecting the point in the sphere that we've just painted. So why is this happening? The reason is that we need to make a third joint. So we're going to go to the 4 view, and in the top we're going to place our new joint roughly in the center. Then we're going to select all of our objects by pressing Shift, Bind, Skin, Smooth Bind. We get an argument. So we'll select our sphere, go to Skin, Detach Skin. This will allow us to rebind it to all 3 joints. We'll go to Bind Skin and smooth bind again. Then we'll go to Skin, Edit Smooth Skin, and we'll go down to the Paint Skin Weights tool again. Opening up our toolbox, selecting our sphere to see the area of influence. We're going to flood this in white, call it the neck joint, because this controls the entire head. When painting skin weights, you have to have the entire object covered with an area of influence. Otherwise, it will just select the master joint and use that to cover the entire mesh with influence. So now that we have a master influence on the neck and head joint, we can go back and paint in the skin weights for the eyebrows. We're going to start by flooding the entire sphere to make sure that we don't have any vertices on the backside that we can't see, or any areas of dark gray, which will still affect the mesh. Again, using the same method, increasing the size of the brush, lowering the opacity to 0.2 to blend, dropping our value to 0, and then making a nice smooth edge where our eyebrow affects. Next, we'll select the right eyebrow, once again painting our area of influence and then blending. Now, you can see that each one of the eyebrows selects the mesh area we painted independently. We can get a nice smooth eyebrow movement through our faceshift software. Next, we want to give our character a generic mouth. We'll do this by selecting a few faces, then dragging them into the object, pressing 3 to go to smooth shaded, right-clicking and selecting the edge tool. We'll select a few edges, press R to open up our scale manipulator, and then bring the edges together to form the lips. Next, we're going to go into our four-screen view and roughly draw out our jaw joint, starting at the top of the jaw, below the ear, and then following the jaw line and finally ending towards the bottom lip. Next, we want to select our mesh. Once again, we'll make our object live by pressing the magnet, selecting our joint tool. We want to add a set of joints along this particular edge. I'm not locking them, I'm just eyeballing them up with the vertices. Then we'll press Enter to finish our joint chain. Then we'll select all of our joints, make our object not live, go to Skin, Edit Smooth Skin, and Add Influence. These will add the selected joints to the binding process. By going to Skin, Edit Smooth Skin, and going back to the Paint Skin Weights tool, then we'll be able to paint the skin weights. I'm not going to make you watch me do the entire thing. But in the end, we have a series of joints at the bottom that controls the chin, and we have a large joint which controls the lower jaw. I'm going to name them jaw and chin. Now we're going to select our curves and select make a new CV curve. By pressing V, it snaps the vertices of the curve to the ends of the joints, thus lining them up with the mesh. Once we finish our curve, we'll again press Enter. Select our curve and we're going to name it Master Curve because this is going to drive the physics of our animation. Next, we want to go from our animation menu to our N dynamics. We'll select N hair, go down to Make Selected Curves Dynamic. Open up the options box. We're going to choose NURBS curves, make the curves dynamic. This will turn it into a hair follicle. Next, we go into the attribute editor. Under the hair shape, we're going to set the influences for our hair dynamics. We're going to start with our stiffness scale because we want the root of the hair to be just as stiff as the end of the hair. So we're going to add a second spline and change it to smooth interpolation, which will give us a nice smooth transition. Then we want to increase our keyframes to 100,000. Now I'm going through and setting the different variables for the hair animation. In the animation menu, we want to go to skeleton and the IK spline tool. We'll reset the tool, turn off create curve, turn off parent curve. Then we want to select the first joint in our joint chain, control select the last joint in our joint chain, and then we want to click on our dynamic curve. And you can see that the joint chain snaps to our dynamic curve. By resetting the simulation back to 1, it sets the dynamic curve in the number 1 position. We're going to take our master curve, which drives the animation, and we're going to move the transform tool by pressing insert and lining it up with the first joint in the jaw. Then we want to select our master curve. We're going to parent it to the last joint in the jaw by pressing P. Now the jaw drives the master curve, which drives the dynamic joint chain. If we go to the N hair menu and we select interactive playback, now we can move the joints with interactive playback. And you see this gives us a nice wiggly chin on our character. It seems that my dynamics are still a little loose. We don't want our jaw to be flapping around that much. So we're going to stop our animation, reset it to the beginning. We're going to select the hair system, scroll down in our channel box until we find stiffness. We're going to raise the stiffness up to 2, and then try running our simulation again by pressing interactive playback, grabbing the jaw joint, and then checking the density of our dynamic curve again. It's still a little bit loose, but you can play around with it and figure out how to get it to work correctly. This gives us a nice, smooth, dynamic animation, which is fairly low cost when it comes to rendering. Now that you have the basic concept of using dynamic curves parented to joint chains, you can create your own animations. I got this from the Maya Unlimited Hair under Lesson 37, Deforming Buddy Character with a Dynamic Curve. Perhaps, as I said, you can find your own ways to use these dynamic curves and joints to create realistic animations using your dazed model. As you can see here, with this dynamic simulation using the pectoral muscles. Each curve acting independently, reacting to the dynamics of the environment without having to be keyframed.